Hello everybody. Thank you for attending this webinar about Revit Live and Stingray. My name is Kiefer Paulson. I've been a visualization specialist with CTC for about 2 years now. And today I'm very excited to present Revit Live and Stingray, what they are and where they are going. So without further ado, go ahead and get into the PowerPoint here. So yeah, a couple housekeeping items. If anybody wants a copy of this PowerPoint, they can feel free to email me directly down there, and I'll be happy to send it to you. There's not a whole lot of information on this PowerPoint. It's kind of a visual demonstration. Additionally, I am recording this, so if you or if anybody you know couldn't make it today or want to watch it again later, in a couple of days here when the video is ready, we'll publish it to our YouTube channel for anybody to read or to listen to and watch. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the questions box. I'll try and leave some time at the end to answer those if there's any. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So the focus of this webinar is to kind of boost our clientele's understanding of these software, as well as maybe answer the question, how can it be useful? Why is Autodesk making it a part of the AEC collection this September? If anybody didn't know that, that's kind of a major update coming soon to the AEC collection. As well as to demonstrate the current level of capabilities for some of these software, and briefly discuss where they're going and how it's going to get there. So first off, what is it? So Revit Live is actually a three-part visualization process. There's the Revit Live, the Live Editor, and the Live Viewer. So it's not all encompassed in one. It's not just a single software that you download and it works. There's actually 3 different tools you need. Right now it's great for examining design choices as well as giving out a widespread presentation. It's immersive and informative because with one-touch VR capabilities, and it still retains the BIM details so that if you set those up in Revit, you can look at them in real time through the live viewer. And if I had to kind of put a job description on these 3 pieces of software, I'd say that Revit Live handles the prep and transferring of the model. The Live Editor, in conjunction with the Stingray game engine, allows you to do the data authoring and managing. It allows you to make your updates, your changes, your visual enhancements all through the editor and the Stingray. And the Live Viewer, finally, is for shipping. So the Live Viewer is kind of an app you can download on iOS or run on the PC, and that's the executable file that you deliver to your clients. It's run through the Live Viewer, so that's Live Viewer kind of handles the shipping of your presentation. And with this process, the Live Viewer is capable of running on iOS and Windows devices. So you can actually run this pretty good-looking architecture visualization project on an iPad. So that's kind of a huge draw for it. And Stingray is a completely separate entity. It was originally designed as a game engine and later incorporated into the AEC and BIM world once people started realizing the visual capabilities of it. It allows for in-depth interactivity, so there's no limits to the creation that you can do inside of Stingray. So if you think of a video game, and there's a lot of things going on in there, but if you strip out the machine guns, the ninjas, and the health packs, and insert useful information such as price per square foot of this wood flooring or the material option choices you have for this granite countertop, suddenly you have a project that is very useful and not so much a video game. So Stingray allows you to do those kind of things if you so desire. And using Stingray, you're capable of publishing to Windows 32-bit devices, Android, iOS, PS4, Xbox One, or web HTML. So a lot more options there if you're developing inside of Stingray. And So I said earlier that the Revit Live was being included in the AEC collection. Stingray is not. However, 3ds Max Interactive just came out with the 2018.1 patch. So you actually need to update. If you have 3ds Max 2018, you can update to 2018.1, and then it allows you to download 3ds Max Interactive as kind of like a 2 gigabyte plugin, if you will, for 3ds Max. And it's essentially Stingray, but it's just bundled up inside of 3ds Max. So with the changes to the AEC collection, you actually will get Stingray, but it will be branded as 3ds Max Interactive. And it's a topic I might cover in a later webinar, maybe even do an in-depth mini training on it. It's still very new, so I'm learning the quirks myself. And yeah, I'm excited to see what it can do. So where they are going, first and foremost, a huge draw for this whole process is the ease of use and simplicity. Getting 3D objects and assets inside of a game engine is actually quite complicated. It's a lot of going down to the binary level of your file, the ones and zeros that make up that .rbt and rvt file. Getting that to run inside of a game engine is very complex. So the fact that they have these workflows right now that allow you to do it with little to no training, it's actually pretty impressive. And how it's doing that is what I like to call interoperability automation. So like I said, going down to that binary level of your file, converting it to a format that a game engine will read. It's kind of where this whole process is going. It's kind of automating that process, making it easier for everybody to get into it. It allows you to give full control of your visualization projects. So whereas a couple other ArcViz tools out there now, they'll allow you to click a button or move a slider to adjust a couple of things inside of your project. Using this game engine and the Revit Live workflow actually allows you to create that button. So it'll allow you to do a whole lot more, basically. You have full control versus limited control. It's currently bridging a gap between artists and architects. So we've seen, so Autodesk is huge about this, the future of making things and cutting edge technology. They're getting to a point now where the only way to go farther with these tools and further develop these things is to kind of get these two very different types of people to talk to each other. So it's pretty interesting to see, just even to be in a room and the conversations that happen between artists and architects. It's pretty unique. And some more technical stuff. If you don't know this, that's fine. If you do, that's great. But currently they're developing ways for Stingray to create custom volumes, triggers, custom GUI, and then deploy that back into the Revit Live viewer. So it's kind of some more technical stuff. So getting into the outline of what this presentation will be, we're going to cover what the Revit Live button is, what it kind of does when you click it, and then we'll open that project in the Live editor, see what it looks like. Then we'll extract and compile that project into the Stingray game engine, and you'll see just how easy it is to do that. Inside of Stingray, we'll make a couple of visual enhancements, and then we'll finally bundle out all that back up and send it back to the Live editor for final deployment. And if we have time at the end, I'll open up a demo project or two that Autodesk has created just to really show off the visual and interactive capabilities of these software. All right, so demonstration time. I downloaded this free project. Looks pretty cool online. It's kind of like a man cave, if you will. There's like a kitchen in there and like a pool table. It looks kind of cool. And it's not that big too, so it makes it easier to go between softwares for the purpose of this demonstration. So if you have Revit Live, you go up to your add-ins here and you see the Go Live button. And if you click on that, it'll show you, the visual style may look a little different, or if there's anything wrong with your model, it'll pop up here, as well as some advanced options, where do you want to download the file to, so on and so forth. And if you hit save and go, a lot of you have probably already seen this window, but it comes up with this little, uploading, waiting, preparing, and then downloading thing. I'm sure you probably thought, like, what the heck's going on here anyway? What are they even doing? To get a model running as smoothly as it does inside of a real-time rendering engine, such as Stingray or Unity or Unreal, a lot of things need to happen, but first and foremost is Polygon Reduction. If you can reduce the amount of polygons, then you can make it run faster, smoother. It's not trying to render as many polygons at once. So that's a huge thing that it does when in that preparing stage, is it's kind of reducing the mesh, as well as converting the material types to a different type of material that will render and operate inside of the game engine. So that's kind of what happens when you click the Go Live button, and that's why it kind of takes longer to do on larger projects versus smaller ones. And when you're done downloading that, you will then get this .lvmd file. You see here, this is the exact project I had inside of Revit, flat 3D view, and then the version number of Revit Live 1.8.1.696. So then what do you do with that? Well, we're going to open up the Live editor here, and quite simply, you just select the file, which as you see is that flat 3D LVMD file, and then it'll create the scene for you. So I'll go ahead and open it, and we'll kind of see, just out of the box what Revit Live did for us with just the click of one button. See, the lighting does transfer over from Revit to Revit Live, and it also gives you the ability to go to the views if you set up different camera views inside of Revit. It's just a matter of clicking a button, and it'll allow you to view from inside that camera position. And this can be run, as I said, on the iPad, so that's why you kind of have this tap and go motion. If you were running this on an iPad, you just tap the screen and then teleport to that location. I fortunately am using it on PC, so I can just move with WASD. And you can see it looks pretty good, but it's not amazing. This brick is kind of really reflective. It's really bright in here. Shadows aren't really existing, and it could look better, right? It could look better. So how do we do that? Well, it's kind of bizarre, but here's the current workflow that Autodesk has created for us. So I'm going to go ahead and make the new folder. We'll call it temp, just because I don't need any of this. I'm going to copy that flat 3D, I'm going to paste it in temp, and what you actually need to do is change the extension from .lvmd to a zip file. So Windows is going to tell me, oh, are you sure? It might become unusable. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So it creates a zip folder, and then you're going to extract it. And we'll extract it right here. And you'll see the contents of that LVMD file is actually a Stingray project. It's got all of the data. There's common data, there's content, models, textures, materials, things like that. Settings, a bunch of just metadata, a lot of stuff that you don't really see on the back end. But all this complex information that it takes to get into a game engine, it's just all right there from the zip file. And what we can do with this now is if we go into Stingray, and if I open up my project browser, my project manager rather, I can just hit add existing, and I'll select a different one right now. Oops. Go to demo room, copy. It'll allow me to select that .stingray_project file. And if I open that, you'll see it just pops up with a new project here. I can double click on this level if I decided and open it up. The first time you open a Stingray project inside of Stingray, it does take a little bit. It has to compile all of those assets, basically just bunch them all up and break them all down to a small, easy to read format. And so I'm not going to do that with this project I just created. I'm just going to remove it. And as you see in the background here, I've already got this flat level open inside of Stingray. So right away you can see it looks a little bit better, huh? There's some bloom going on with the lights. The cameras are in position. I can adjust those camera positions if I so desired. The lighting looks considerably better, and that's because I sort of recreated these light schemes here. There's better looking reflections. If we go in here, there's actually, reflections that show up thanks to Stingray's reflection probes. And all in all, it just looks pretty good. It looks a lot better than what it did before. So that's great. But how do we get there? So I mentioned these reflection probes, and we'll do one of these really quick just to show how it's done. But these reflection probes essentially send out a ray and bounce back the color that it sees from this circular area. And if we go to the lighting window, and I'll go ahead and clear the reflection probes now, so you see now we don't have those reflections coming out of the mirrors. That's because I've cleared the reflection probes. But if we went to window again, lighting, bake reflection probes, it'll show you, suddenly you got those real-time reflections going on. And that's just one of the many visual capabilities that Stingray allows you to do, sending it back to the live viewer. Another one that I've done in here, and I can't do this live because it does take a little while, but light baking. So if we bring up the light baking window, this is just super simple stuff. Obviously, baking reflection probes is just a matter of placing the probes in your level and then baking them. The light baking is a little bit different. It'll actually change the way your lights read inside of the scene, and how it does that is by baking the texture of the shadow onto your model. So if I were to delete these lights, oh, that didn't happen the way I wanted it to. But if I were to clear the light maps, a lot of these shadows would disappear when I run it in real time. And that's basically what light baking does. It assesses your whole scene and bakes the shadows onto the geometry so that it can run faster. It doesn't have to calculate how those lights react because it's just baked down to a 2D texture. So light baking and reflection probes are two really quick, really simple ways to really make your visualization project pop inside of Stingray. And it's really easy stuff. I just put 2 reflection probes in this world, and then after I recreated the lights, baked the shadows onto the textures, and that was all done in about an hour, maybe if that even. There's also a lot of other stuff that can be done inside of Stingray. We're obviously not going to have time to cover all of it, but once we're done making those visual enhancements, we can actually go back to the projects that I created here. Oops, flat enhance. And what we're going to do is grab everything except the asset server directory. So this is everything that was inside of that zip file originally. After I save everything out, make sure everything's nice and good and ready to go, you grab everything except that asset server directory, and then you zip it right back up. So yeah, we'll just do this right now. So you zip it right back up, and then same thing that we did before. We're going to change that extension again back to LVMD. Come on. LVMD, yes, I'm sure, and suddenly it's another LVMD file that I can pop open in the live editor. So one of the caveats here is if you're working on the same Revit Live project, if you only click the Go Live button once inside of Revit, you can't open the same scene again, unfortunately. So I'll actually have to delete this original scene, and then I'll select the enhanced one that I did up for us already. So fortunately this step is pretty quick. And we'll get into, let's see, got about 10 minutes left here. We'll get into a project inside of the live viewer once this is done. Ooh, we don't need Oculus. So I'm sorry this does take a moment. This is one of the caveats, as I mentioned, of working inside of Revit Live and Stingray. Alright. Go ahead and open that scene. And go back inside. Suddenly this looks, just how it did inside of Stingray. We got the lights that I've recreated, and I can still toggle those on and on and off with L. We still have the tap to go motion. We can adjust, the sun. We still have all the BIM information of the models inside of Revit, even though we went from Revit to Live to Stingray and then back to Live. It still maintained all of that information. And yeah, it looks pretty stinking good. And we'll, I got an HTC Vive here, so we'll go ahead and click the VR button. And yeah, now we're inside of VR. So, see, we got these controllers here. These nice little contextual controls for us. You can teleport wherever. I can still press L on the keyboard to turn the lights on and off if I desire. And one really cool thing is, if you're working inside of VR, one of the buttons here says Minimap. If I press that, then my project becomes this little tabletop size one that I can actually control with the microphone, or not the microphone, the controller. And if I so desire, I can just point and shoot, and now I'm back to that 1-to-1 scale. So yeah, pretty cool. Go ahead and escape out of the VR. And let's see, got about 5 minutes left. I'll go ahead and open up one of the Autodesk demo projects inside of the live viewer. So this is available for download off of Autodesk's website for the live viewer. It's Villa Martini enhanced with Stingray. So, and again, the live viewer is a separate app, right? It's an app that can be run on iOS or any Windows device. So this is essentially the presentation that you would be bundling up and giving out using the Autodesk Live workflow. So you can see we don't have any of the other stuff on the side that we had before inside of the live editor. We are now in just strictly the viewing motion. And we can see they added some people in here. They're actually kind of moving around. That looks pretty cool. They added these cool little contextual icons here that will start to spin and rotate as you approach them, as well as put some text on the wall. So that looks pretty cool. You guys probably can't hear it, but there is sound effects in the background. They got not only just textures, but animated textures, right? That's pretty cool. You can put stuff on the TV, as well as some, they have this cute little do not disturb sign on the door they don't want you to go through, and those will highlight and unhighlight as you get close to them. Doors are animated. and we can still click on those views that they made for us to just go right into the views. Oop, fell through the floor, that's alright. But yeah, that is essentially Autodesk Live, Revit Live, going to Stingray, back to the Live editor, and then bundling it up for the presentation. So let's see, is there any questions right now? What do we got? We'll pop that out. What kind of machine are you working from? We partnered with Box Incorporated, BOXX. This is one of their workstation laptops. It's about a little over $4,000, but it's stronger than my desktop computer. So it's pretty nice, Box laptops. I'd look into them if you need some sort of a virtual reality workstation like this. Does the MEP, OOTB, and custom properties also fall into the workflow from Revit? I believe so. I personally haven't tested it with MEP objects, Mr. Jonathan Roy. I haven't tested it with some of the more in-depth MEP things. I know obviously it handles the BIM stuff from architecture projects. So I'll have to get back to you on that one. I joined late. Did I miss the door prizes? I'm sorry, we didn't have any handouts really. I did mention if anybody wants to get the PowerPoint from me or possibly get these project files that I was working on, you can go ahead and email me directly at kieferp@cadtechnologycenter.com. Is this environment a texture map on a sphere? The environment is actually a 3D model that I believe they just opened up and sculpted in some mountains and painted on some rock texture. So it's not actually a sphere. The background environment, however, is what I'm saying by that is like the clouds and the blue sky and stuff. That is an environment that's created inside of Stingray. It's basically a camera function. So it's not actually a 3D sphere that has to be rendered. It's just something built internally in the camera. So it doesn't look like it's just nothingness back there. It looks like a sky. Let's see. How do we have property for instance, the manufacture of the kitchen appliances. How could you pre-bake door swing, light controls, and beeps from keypads? So a lot of that, that's getting into some more in-depth stuff inside of Stingray. If we open up the project inside of Stingray, if we go down to the properties, I just clicked on the walls. If we go down to the properties, you'll see there's script data, and one of the script data is BIM info, and this is where you would create additional information for your models. It's actually all copied down into like a text file, as script is, and if you write it correctly, it's capable of just running as you saw before in the live viewer. And a lot of the door swinging, light controls, beeps from keypads, that's all handled through scripting and programming. One really cool thing about Stingray is that it has the visual script editor. So you can actually, if we were to create like, a node and another random node, let's create an input one. Or if we were to pull it out, it gives us a list of things that we can choose from. I'm just doing willy-nilly. I'm not doing anything extreme right now, but this will actually allow you to script visually by just connecting the output connections of the nodes to the input connections. So that's getting into a lot more in-depth stuff, and I'm happy to answer more questions about that topic, as well as make another presentation maybe more in-depth about 3ds Max Interactive and Stingray on a later date. Can I get the balloon as a Revit family? That's, I'm not sure about that one. Does Revit Live Viewer require a decent hardware set? Does it require a lot of GPU, RAM, etc.? Like I said, it does run on iPad, so depending on how much stuff you stick into it, it can bog down an iPad. I have seen it happen before. But you shouldn't need anything more than the standard, kind of like standard workstation stuff. This particular machine is kind of overkilling it. It's got a 1080, I think 1080 Ti graphics card and 64 gigs of RAM. You can certainly run on, say a GTX. I run it at home at least on a GTX 970 with only 16 gigs of RAM. So it doesn't require a lot, but it certainly requires something made within maybe the last 5 years. Do they have a cityscape? Oh, I'm glad you asked. They actually do have, so inside of Stingray here, they have this online assets. And these are all just free to use things that Autodesk created. So for instance, if we go to live assets, you can see there's a whole lot of them. We can go down to, there's people here. Like you saw before, the animated people. There's a bunch of different types of cars. If we go to units, you'll see there's actually some city stuff. Newspaper stack, where were they? Yeah, city mailbox, dumpster, as well as some dynamic assets that will actually blow in the wind if you set up, wind functions, stuff like that. Buildings, yeah, here's some like big buildings here, just massive structures that you can create and use as a background object. Let's see. You also may have said this already. If Revit, yes. So probably the last thing we have to answer here, but the Revit Live is included in the AEC collection as of next month. So it hasn't happened yet. They haven't made the transition yet. But I did say this before. Revit Live is going to be included in the AEC collection, and Stingray has been rebranded as 3ds Max Interactive, and 3ds Max is in the AEC collection. So if you update to 2018.1 3ds Max, you will get Stingray as basically a plugin for 3ds Max. And the only real difference there is that it's just been rebranded as Max Interactive instead of Stingray. So, yes. All right, well, I hope everybody enjoyed. I know I did. And, yeah, feel free to send me an email if you want any of these, if you have any further questions, or if you want the PowerPoints or even the project files. They're kind of large, but I think we'll be able to share them openly if anybody so desires.